Unlearning is very close to my heart, and it's been the core of my journey for as long as I can remember, uh, right from my teen life, I would say. So before we begin, I wanted to share a little bit about um, unlearning. But before I share about what unlearning means to me, I would love to hear from each of you. Maybe in one or two lines, if you had to get to the heart of what does unlearning bring up for you in your heart, in your minds. I would love to hear all of your voices as we begin. Anyone who feels called out to can just share. What does that mean to you? What does the word unlearning mean?
Hi, I'm sorry. I'm going to try to get my video working through my phone, but unlearning for me means finding my way back to my center. So it means, peeling the onion, going backwards, and trying to reach the point, my beginning point, which is my light, and release a whole bunch of layers of perception or identity that do not really belong, or that I grasped to have a sense of foundation or security, which were actually, not really part of my essence, but possibly. But it's time to shed all the untruths.
Very well put. Thank you for sharing. I also am noticing that someone has chosen to share on the chat. That is also a wonderful idea. If you feel like you're not feeling called out to putting your voice out here, you feel more comfortable putting it on the chat, then maybe I could read it out for the others as well. Shruti has shared that uh, for her, unlearning is understanding my conditioning and moving beyond them. Anyone else before we move ahead? Anyone else feels called out to share? Returning to ourselves to understand what we are doing wrong to others. Wonderful. So today what we will try and look at is to hear a little bit about the context setting that we are holding in place for the duration of the session. Because we've called it an unlearning lab, it's pretty much going to be an immersive journey where each of you are going to journey with me through a little experiment that I have designed, and we are going to see what emerges for each of us during this time. And in order to move into that, I wanted to share a very simple slideshow that I've prepared. Let me just put that up. Um, I'm still getting used to seeing my face in this new format where I'm just on one corner of the screen. Can everyone see the screen? Is it visible?
Yes.
Sorry about that noise. We have some very loud motorbikes right outside. All right. So today's work we're going to look at is looking at unlearning from the context of how can unlearning be a way of life itself? When I look at my journey through unlearning, I see that unlearning is not something that I can sometimes just directly do. It's something that emerges as a consequence of different things that I'm paying attention to, experimenting with, trying out, and doing, witnessing, listening. There's a whole bunch of things that are happening, right? So when I look back at what are some of the core things that go into the process of that which will emerge into unlearning, one of the things that stayed with me the most is to look at slowing down as a pedagogy. And especially in the world that we are living in today, to look at the complex interconnections of all the things that are emerging. My sensing of looking at life within me and around me is that there seems to be a certain running towards something. Everyone is in a rush. Just earlier today, we were at a diagnostic center, and we just wanted to know how long would it take for us to get the report back. And then the person at the receptionist counter, she was just unwilling to give us a time period. She said it might take its own time. And then I said, but we've not eaten anything. Could you tell us if we can come back, and have our food and come back, because we've been starving for quite some time. And she said, oh, I don't have time to do all of this because everyone is in a rush. And I looked around and there were just four people in the entire room, right? And the first question that struck me was, where is the rush? Who is this rush for? Where are we rushing towards? And I noticed that this is not just happening in daily interactions. This is happening with how we look at technology, how we look at uh, creating infrastructure, building our lives in terms of wealth that we want, knowledge that we want, social groups that we form. There always seems to be a mad race. It's almost as if, like some of the AI companies have been saying, if we don't do it, somebody else is going to get there. So it might rather be us, right? So there's always some kind of reasoning that's always pushing us towards moving faster and getting there before someone else does. So given the the urgency of the situation that we have today. Often at times I even wonder about things like climate change and the climate crises that we are part of, which is one of the many different crises that we are interconnected to. It feels like it's time to act. Just slowing down feels counterintuitive. But I feel when we really look at it with clarity, a lot of the things that has brought us here is this mad rush to develop, to build infrastructure, to keep creating, to keep producing, to keep marketing, to keep exploiting. And so, as counterintuitive as it might seem, there is value in slowing down, in paying attention to that which matters most, because in slowing down, I feel something radically important emerges. And therein lies the secret for me to latch on to this way of unlearning that has worked for me personally. So when we look at the process of unlearning, where many of you got it beautifully, put it very beautifully. The idea is to peel back the many layers of how we look at the world, what has distorted our ways of looking at ourselves, looking at the world, and what impacts how we create our relationships, how we build our society consciously or unconsciously, what work we choose to put into the world, and more importantly, what is the quality of each of these, right? I might do different roles in the world, I might hold different positions out there, I might pick up different relationships and hold positions, but how well do I qualitatively engage with it moment to moment is what determines, one, the quality of how rich my life is. Because at the end of my life, when I look back, it's not how much I've done, but how intensely I experienced life that's going to make my life feel enriched. Secondly, if whether irrespective of whether we are good at something or not, which comes later to me, I feel like when human beings come together and put their heart into something, I think the space naturally becomes more and more beautiful. And I think something beautiful emerges from that space. And I think for me, unlearning is about looking at that subtle aspect of life that impacts the quality of how we engage with and how we experience life in every moment, even the mundane stuff and the most important stuff. But it's about how intensely alive we can be in each moment, right? So, to do that, it became important for me to start paying attention to what are these stories that I'm holding within me. Sometimes I've picked them up consciously, sometimes they've just stuck onto me. I've internalized it for some reason because of culture, education, whatever. But these stories are actively shaping the way engaging with myself and the world. So, how do I, first of all, pay attention to what are these stories before I even take a call about what do I do with this? Do I fix this? Do I change this? Do I drop this? All of this comes later. The first step in any relationship is to listen and to really pay attention to what is actually there. So, how do we bring out and recognize the stories that we hold within us? That's what we're going to look at today in our Unlearning Lab. And in many ways, I've always felt that unlearning is about the story of all the stories that we have, and what stories empower us, what stories debilitate us, and how each of that shapes the interconnected space that we share. But how do we bring out these stories that we are holding? How do we recognize them? What will help us get in touch with this? Sometimes it's someone externally who might just notice this and tell us. Sometimes in a moment of introspection, it comes up. But can there be conscious tools for us to hold as lenses that would help us bring out these stories more effectively? And you know what I found? The most interesting way to bring out the stories that we hold is to pick a story as a lens. Yeah. So today, this is going to sound quite fun for me to write. I was having a lot of fun putting this down. So today we're going to use a story as a lens, but this story is b- by created with inputs that I have heard with from people, from my own reflections over years of talking to people, because I've been working over the last decade and a half on self transformation, working with community building. I worked in facilitating social transformation spaces. We've worked with kids, we've worked with adults, and it has been a very enriching experience to look at different people's stories about how they see their own journeys, and how do they see their own process of self transformation, and how that impacts the world. So I've looked at different themes that have emerged from all of these conversations, and I've added my own little twists and my own experiences along the way to design a visual story today, right? And this visual story will have no text. This will just be pictures. And because of where I come from, the part of the world that I come from, the culture I'm connected to, and because of my own passion for studying the yogic philosophy, this is almost following a very common thread of a storyline that talks about human transformation from this part of the world. So that is the nature of what visual you'll be seeing. But as you're looking at this visual, I would like us to use it as a lens to revisit our own life stories and see what does that bring up for us as we engage with with this story, and whatever is emerging for us while we pay attention, what does that actually talk to us or tell us about the many stories that we okay? So this is the overall idea of what I had planned in mind today. So there are about 16 slides, and we will take about 1 minute per slide. I'll just share the logistics of how we're going to do this. We will take 1 minute per slide, and I'll just play some mild music behind. If you feel like it's distracting you, you can just mute, because the slides will keep moving and you will see the end with a little title there, so then you know that it's come to an end. So you can always like turn on your speakers again, right? You can increase the volume of your speakers, but the music would just be there. We will try and, in the spirit of unlearning and the pedagogy of unlearning, we will try to slow down ourselves while we are doing this. If you happen to have a notebook or a sheet of paper and a pen, it would be really helpful, because what I'd like us to do as we're going through each slide is to just sit with what you're seeing. There are many obvious and subtle elements that are there. And I've just designed it on Canva. So it's just a very basic vector art put together. But you will see as you go through each of these slides, it's connecting together as a story. But with each slide, I would like you to see if you can pay attention to what physical sensations are emerging for you as you're feeling evocations come up with each of the slides. Similarly, what emotions are evoking inside of you as we see the visual. Now, before we enter into the story, I would invite all of us to just spend 1 minute to do a very simple breath practice, because when we learn to regulate our breath a certain way, our ability to center ourselves into our own sensations, into our own evocations, slightly shifts. So let's try and prepare ourselves a little before going ahead. Wherever you're sitting, however you're sitting, sit comfortably. See if you can sit with your spine comfortably erect. And if you can keep your palms open on your legs or your lap or your thigh, That would be great. And we're just going to spend 1 minute with our eyes closed, trying to make our breath as soft and as gentle as possible. There's no other instruction. Try not to deliberately alter the length of your breath. That's not the invitation here. It's simply to see whatever happens when you try to keep your breath as soft, as delicate, as gentle as possible. Just see if you can stay with that process. If you feel that your breath is moving away from this intention, gently bring it back and try to stay, keep it soft, gentle, and very tender. Let's begin. I'll let you know after the minute is. If you're noticing stiffness in any part of your body, try and consciously relax it without moving your body too much. The deep breath usually helps me, and you can relax into the out breath. But once you've relaxed, come back to the intention of keeping your breath as light and as tender as possible. Sorry. Could you just let me know if you can hear the music behind? Is there a music playing in the background?
No, no.
Okay. Just 1 second. Let me just restart.
No.
Still nothing?
Still no music.
Okay.
Mhm. I think when you may have to restart the slides and there should be an option share with sound.
Yeah, I did try that, but let me just restart the music itself once, and if
Uh-huh.
that doesn't work, okay, nothing yet. All right.
Did you try share and then the advanced where it says share computer sound?
Okay. I think what's happening is that I can't even listen to the music from my own system, so maybe it's not playing right now, or maybe the audio settings have cut it out for some reason. We just tried one last time. If not, we'll just go ahead with the slides without the music. Let's do it in absolute silence, which is also perfectly okay. Okay, looks like the audio is not working, but let's just go with the visuals alone. Gives us more space to be diverse, and each of you can play your own music in your heart and allow that to guide you forward. Okay, let's start with the first. Going to the next one in 10 seconds. Moving forward in 10 seconds. Moving on in 10. Bring it 10. Forward in 10. Forward. Forward in 10. Forward. Forward again. Forward. Forward.
Kaushik, I think you are muted. I cannot hear you.
Sorry, I had used another mute system. Thank you. So we'll take the next few minutes and we'll just look at what is emerging for us when we use the story as a lens to observe what's happening within us when we see what parts of our life journey is emerging for us, reflected off of the story at various points, and what are some visual memories coming from your past life experiences that are popping up for you. When we say visual memories, the idea is to try and avoid getting into an intellectual analysis paralysis, right? So we try and not go there. We're not trying to analyze, not trying to figure out why it's coming and what's happening and the mechanics of it, but simply to stay with different memories that are popping up, what's happening. And you can allow this to find expression through art. You would like, if you feel like moving your body, you can move. You feel like humming a tune that's helping you let it flow. Or if you feel like just writing it down, I love sometimes writing through poetry. So see what's emerging for you as you sit with the story and see what's reflecting and coming up for you at various points. We'll take the next few minutes to do that and then come to a quick discussion. Take about a minute and a half more max because of the constraint of time, and we'll get back into the sharing. Just put up a quick reflection slide for those of you who feel ready. Take your time and We'll do it in popcorn style. Whoever feels ready to share, just hear from those who anything about the process and whatever is emerged. We'll try and see if we can limit our sharing to about 2 minutes per person so that we can try and hear more voices. If we've gone through whoever wants to share, and if there's more time, we'll always come back and share. Space is open to share.
Thing that came up for me is just sort of the alternating desires I think I have around purpose, around finding purpose through the rhythm of a daily routine, like a job, and then the purpose of like a journey to go find some form of enlightenment type of vibe, and how I feel like in my life I'm oftentimes alternating between those two, um, because the rhythm and sort of fitting in also comes with a sense of community on some level because other people are doing it, and how lonely, how much I oftentimes feel much more like excited to be on that journey, that like enlightenment style journey, but then also end up feeling very detached, alone, and like not a part of a society. It feels very selfish. Um, yeah, that's what I started writing about. A lot of like, what's the point? Where will it lead? Mindset that like stops me from either from um, fully committing to either form of like rhythm. That makes sense.
Maybe I can share also. I resonated a lot with what you say, Nish, about that isolation. um, yeah, it started with, I was highlighting words at the beginning, like obligation, compliance, wishing for freedom, and then the excitement to start exploring the illusion, the change, and the change to seeing the colors and being present. No, that at some point it's like, oh, you are actually to see way more things, and guided by curiosity and more alive. What surprised me is that the guy along the way was still with his square on top, and that thing wasn't losing colors in the process, because for me it felt kind of a journey in which that each step in that path will start changing yourself a little bit more. And then when the enlightenment part, when I saw it, it was like, why the guy is also square? But it's like the diversity of possibilities, not that everything ended up in something with four corners, kind of generated something in me. And then the isolation part, it was like, but that guy is completely as isolated from everything else. And for me, one core element is the people that surrounds me and the nature. Those I have found to be the teachers that make me realize the stories I'm telling myself. But then there is new people coming, so then there is clarity of what the purpose of reaching to that point is. So it's like, okay. But yeah, those two weird feelings were also there in the process.
Thank you both for sharing. Others, do you want to share more?
Yeah, I can share a little bit about my experience. Hi, everybody. It was so interesting as I started to write. Because well, with the first images with the squares and kind of the more linear and the clocks and all of that, like I was just so like kind of resistant to that. I was like, oh, you know. And then, after the journey and like I was writing, I realized or like remember that when I was in high school, I did this like whole senior year of high school, like a whole year art project that was like focused on clocks and like them melting, like the Lee type, and I realized like a lot of, at that point in high school, I had been in the structure of school for like whatever, how many years we are since we're children. Um, and it was like a rebellion to that. Like I think that teenager was like really wanting freedom and wanted kind of these structures to melt. And it like after the years after, I mean, I feel like that was the start. It was like, okay, I'm about to be done with the system. Let me look for something different or unconsciously try to find something for myself. So yeah, it was cool remembering that project because to tell you guys the truth, I hadn't like visually, like I love that you said like think of visuals more than thoughts because it's like visually those visuals of the clocks melting and me painting them came back to my life. That was like 20, well maybe not, I'm not that old. 15 years ago. And yeah, other kind of bodily things that came up for me through the progression of the story, I realized like my first reaction to some of the images, especially the ones that were like when like the character was climbing up the mountain and kind of surrendering on his knees, were like very like almost like it was like I would smile and like a laughter and then I would feel this energy go down from my shoulders to my spine and I've learned to recognize that a little bit of like a sense of like intuitive truth is like I was like almost a smile. I was like, oh yeah, of course he becomes like what he sees as spirit, like of course then like of course he sees spirit when like he's brought to his knees. Yeah, there was just the same thing when I saw your name at the end, like in the last slide, it was like also very bodily thing. It's like, oh my God, like a sense of like I don't know how to explain it. It was so weird, but it's more like as if I became you in a way. It's like, oh, how beautiful to witness another human being creating such a beautiful story. But it was like, yeah, I don't know, guys. It was like I'm grateful for like the tuning into the body sensation because there's like something that my mind can't process. It was like it's like my body told me something that was true. My body knows before my mind does. So yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Part of my unlearning is also to uh, receive those parts of our sharing which just words can't cover, right? Just to be able to embrace them as equally as everything. Thank you. I would love a chance to hear those of you who have not shared as well, if you feel like sharing. Someone has also put up on the chat, sorry, I just noticed that.
I'm happy to share. I resonated with bits of what was shared from everybody. Maria, the word I actually put down for like the very structured images was literally meh, gross, and lifeless. So I really resonated with your ugh. And Luz, I felt something similar of just like something being activated in me when I saw that image of like the enlightened being alone at the top. And I'm like, oh, I don't want this narrative that it's lonely at the top kind of narrative. So then I tried to reframe that for myself of like, maybe this is me resourcing to my awareness of interbeingness. Like that image encapsulates all life and just absorbing more as more are awakening and coming in, and that source of life being more full and more just the remembrance of that. And so that kind of quelled some of the stickiness around that. And Nissa, when you were talking about just like the tension between this and that, I also I wrote down like I feel like I have my one foot here where I'm still like latching onto this paradigm that I was conditioned into, and then this other paradigm that I want to move into. And I noticed a lot of fear and resentment come up. Resentment of like, gosh, but I don't get to travel and hang out with camels like that. Or like, it's really scary. I don't get to have it. I won't have an income. How will I sustain this? And then what then started to shift from me is, let me look for the possibilities in the cracks here. Where can I do the traveling and the resourcing for myself? And a lot of it came back to like my inner work. Like, how do I get to continue to embody it in the tiny choices that I get to make every single day, and trusting that that will amount to something. And I don't need to do it alone. Like, the community is free, nature is free. So yeah, I'm just really appreciating the inquiries there from myself of how do I get to still do what these images are portraying in my own way.
Sharing. Thank you, Apurva, for also putting your thoughts here on the chat. And Manish, Prakash, if you and may, I think we've not heard, but if you want to share very quickly, I know we've just crossed time, but if you want to briefly share quickly, and then we can just bring the sharing circle to a close.
Yeah, I will go. So I will speak on the theme. I understood the pictures like it's a journey of a person who sort of he's caught up in the daily life, business or whatever, corporate world or something, and then leaves job, goes out, seeks sort of guidance, and finds it at the top of the mountain. And so that's the story. And the teacher becomes the student, becomes the teacher, teacher becomes the student. It's like a loop. So that was the sort of like that. I think that is what we can make from the pictures. So in my life experience I had in the last 2 3 years, that I was part of a company, and I got to learn lot from those people. So my experience is that I feel like we have a sort of a Venn diagram when we meet people, where some part of our is shared by them, and vice versa. So I had that kind of experience with that team, where I thought that I share a lot with these people. But eventually, when I left that organization, when I got to leave, I realized that I tried to do the same thing. Like, I tried to retain some of those things, that I tried to do the same work that I was doing before, but I felt that I had to change in a lot of way. Like, I cannot do in the same way I was doing with that organization, with those people. I had to unlearn, like on your theme, like I had to unlearn a lot of things that I was doing with them, and do it in my own way. So it was a lot of unlearning, and try to do things in my own way, change a lot of things to do the same work that I was doing there. And so that is what I could relate with this on the theme of unlearning.
Thank you for sharing, Manish. I also recognize the intricate job of juggling time and making sure the slots are open for the space is open for the next slot. So let me just take a minute to sort of wrap up everything, and then we'll bring it to a close. Those of you who have not had a chance to share, you could put it on in the chat, or maybe just reach out to me, and I would love to hear. I think, Iveta, if you could just share the contact details and my mail addresses and other things on the chat, you could just find a way to reach out and share your evocations with me. I would love to hear that.
Kaushiek, you
I
never
have not
shared
shared it
your
with
contact
you.
with me.
Yeah, I have not shared it with you. I just realized.
Me
Sorry,
too.
that's my bad. I was wondering.
So much
Okay,
for
let me
our
just.
planning.
That's the way it goes. All right. Thank you. I've just put it up on the chat. For those of you who would like to stay in touch, please do. I just wanted to share before closing that this story is intended to not just evoke but also sometimes provoke and sometimes invoke different things. The last year when I presented, we looked at death as an unlearning pedagogy and looked at the story of how we look at death and how that has shaped human systems and our lives and all of that. So then I realized that each story that we are hearing and each of the stories that I was hearing from each of you can again become a lens for me to again look at myself. So in that sense, the world and I mean through space and time, every moment and every bit of space is a lens available for us as long as we're paying attention. It can become a source of unlearning for us, and that is how I want to look at unlearning. That the beauty of human intelligence is that you can turn anything into a tool for your transformation if we are willing to pay attention to it. So that's at the core of the work that we are doing.